that I have not adopted the policy of, for example, Delta Airlines that I mentioned to you, that they no longer say ladies and gentlemen because it's not inclusive. So the question, of course, is whom does it not include? It includes trans people, includes, of course, gay people. Whom doesn't ladies and gentlemen include? Only those who do not identify either as a man or a woman. One of the smallest groups of human beings on earth. Anyway, welcome. I'm Dennis Prager. This is Fireside Chat number
362.
Number 362. It's a particularly somber one, to be completely open with you. And I'm not a particularly somber person, as you probably have figured out by now. But it's exactly a year ago that the greatest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust took place, and one of the most horrendous massacres on one day, period. It was a horror, and I don't have more to add than to what I've said over the course of the year periodically. But this is a very important rule, and that is that those who do not fight evil fight those who do fight evil. And I learned this very young in high school when I realized that the people who did not fight communism fought the people who did fight communism. They fought anti-communists. They hated anti-communists. It's a pretty lousy human trait, A, not fighting evil, but B, fighting the people who do. Because if the people who fight evil are right, why aren't I fighting evil? It's a real challenge to people, to their conscience, to their courage. And so there is a real hostility in many cases, for people who really fight evil. The police, I never thought of that before. Police fight evil, and there's the same people who are anti-Israel and the same people who were against the anti-communists are hostile to police. Yeah, it just occurred to me that this is a perfect example. They do a pretty good job when they're allowed to, at any rate. And people know that, because if people are in really, really big trouble, they call the police. Even people who hate the police call the police. Hey, there's evil at my door. Here, no, I'm calling 911. I'm calling the police. But there is tremendous antipathy, and the same crowd that is anti-Israel and that was against the anti-communists is against the police. It follows. So it drives me crazy, and not much drives me crazy, because I'm not easily driven crazy. Why isn't it obvious? Israel is the only country on earth targeted for annihilation. Why is that not enough to make a decent person pro-Israel? I don't know what the answer is. This week, I will have spoken at MIT and Brown. I'll be very curious to see if students who oppose me, should they come to my speech, will have an answer to that. There's no other country in the world, there are 200-something countries, targeted for annihilation. And that's what its enemies announce. The issue has nothing to do with the Palestinian state, nothing to do with it. That's a facade. The real aim is to destroy Israel. Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran are not interested in building a Palestinian state. They're interested in destroying the Jewish state. I talked to a woman in Israel. She's the head of a Middle East news bureau. And can you imagine living in a country where you are surrounded by countries that want to murder you? There's no analogy. Even Ukraine, Russia. The Russians have no interest in annihilating Ukraine. They may have interest in taking some of its territory. but they have no interest in annihilating Ukraine or killing all Ukrainians. We don't have an analogy in this world. Do you oppose evil or do you oppose the people who fight evil? It's a really good question. Okay, I want to take as many questions as possible. There we go. Take it away.
Hey, Dennis. My name is Joe, and I'm from O'Fallon, Missouri, and I've been a public school teacher for the last 28 years. And here's an idea I want to throw out regarding arming teachers in the classroom. So a lot of people are uncomfortable with the idea of teachers having handguns, but what if we made an option for teachers to be armed with tasers? With proper training, of course, but if they had that, that would add a layer of security without the potential for a fatal accident. Thanks.
All right. Well, Joe, I gotta say, I don't know if tasers would work. First of all, you have to be relatively close to the person you're tasing in order for it to be effective, whereas bullets are effective from a long distance. I can't hurt to train people in tasing, but I don't see that nearly as effective as arming teachers. I am for arming teachers. Is there a risk that the teacher with using an arm, using a weapon, will hurt an innocent person? Yes. There is no good policy that has no risks. The moment we raise the speed limit, we know there will be an increased number of deaths on the highways. But it's absurd to keep the speed limit particularly low because of that reason. That's the way life works. And I have a very simple but effective question. Imagine two schools. You are one of these really sick dudes who wants to kill students. There are two schools in your area. One school has a sign, beware, teachers are armed. The other school has a sign, this is a gun-free zone. Which would you enter? The question is so obvious. The fact that people don't ask that question is another proof of the fact that people who are indoctrinated, that is, who hold a doctrine. I hold many doctrines. I think love your neighbor as yourself is a doctrine. But people who hold irrational doctrines will not be swayed by reason. The doctrine will be stronger than reason. Of course, someone who wants to do harm to kids is going to enter the gun-free zone more readily than beware, our teachers are armed. So on those grounds alone, it is worth arming teachers. Not all. They have to be trained and so on. I understand. But just in terms of deterring criminal violence, it is worth arming teachers. And as I said, of course there is a risk. There is nothing that's risk-free. But everything in life you weigh. There's a risk in having children, correct? They may be sick. They may be bad. They may die. They may bring you misery. There's also the possibility that they will bring you incredible joy and that you will have added a good human being to the human race. Nothing good, whether it is preventing school shootings or making a family, nothing good comes without a risk. This has been a feature of American life in much of my lifetime, The motto of the country is no longer e pluribus unum, in God we trust, liberty. Rather, it's better safe than sorry. That's the motto of the country. Better safe than sorry. Which is, it's a bizarre saying, because there's a level of safety that you might reach that will actually make you sorry. If you want the safety of no pain in marriage, don't get married. No pain from children, don't have children. But at the end of your life, you will not have had a family, you will not have had a marriage, and that strikes me as a sad final phase of one's life. So we haven't taught, from my generation on, there has not been this notion you take risks for a good life. You take risks for a good policy. That is inherent to a good life. Okay, on we go. Prager United member question. I want to remind you that if you want to help PragerU keep everything free, including the Fireside chat, go to PragerUnited.com, where you will find an immense number of benefits to joining Prager United. One of the little ones is you get the first question after the video question. And here it is. It's from Mark in Denver, Colorado. I am a 60-year-old Christian male with 2 master's degrees. This is the only nonprofit that is PragerU, besides the church that I support financially. Thank you. There is something so unique about PragerU, specifically you, Dennis. So my question is, what do you think it is that sets you apart and makes PragerU so different? Well, I'm really on the spot here, because whatever answer I give is going to sound like I'm boasting or complimenting myself. My interest in complimenting myself is zero, just for the record. This is 7 years of broadcasting. It's not my want. It's not my nature. But you asked me, so I'll be totally open and let the chips fall where they may. I knew I was different in high school. I knew it. I marched to a completely different drummer. That's my nature. Either God or nature put it there, or both. But I knew from a very early age. I didn't do any homework in high school. And what did I do instead? I taught myself Russian and how to read symphonic scores so I could conduct. How many high school kids do that? The answer is 0. No, 1. Me. My parents didn't understand me, and it's not their fault. Parents don't understand exceptional children, whether exceptionally bad or exceptionally good, because they're normal. The normal don't understand the non-normal, whether good or bad. And I wasn't normal in that sense. I was very happy. I had a lot of friends, all the good things, but I wasn't normal. I was preoccupied with good and evil from a very early age. I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I wrote it, as I think I've mentioned, in my diary in high school. I want to influence people to the good. That was it. That's what I wanted to do. And I thought clearly. It's another gift that I was given. I think clearly. I think morally, and I think clearly. That's a very powerful combination. And obviously it's transferred to PragerU. And the rest is history, as they say. Evan, 32, Livonia, Michigan, USA. Dennis, when talking to atheists, you always ask them if they hope they are wrong. Now I ask you, do you hope you are wrong about Jesus being the Messiah? I am a non-denominational Reformed Christian, and I believe that Christ has come and he will come again. It's clearly taught in the Bible, even in the Pentateuch and Old Testament. So do you hope you are wrong? I've been a long-time listener, and your wisdom is indispensable. Praying for you. Okay, so what you read in the Pentateuch and Old Testament, I don't read. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just telling you that we bring our religious convictions often to our reading of Scripture. I would say, though, on my behalf, that I try not to do that. I try to read what is there. And my Bible commentary is based on what is written, not what does my religion say. And that's why it's got a very large readership of people of different religions. Anyway, do I hope I'm wrong? So when I ask an atheist, do you hope you're wrong? What am I asking? I'm asking, you say there is no God. Do you hope there is no God? That's what I'm asking, right? Do you hope you're right? Do you hope there is no God? Or do you hope that you're wrong, that there is a God? Any intellectually honest atheist would say, I hope I'm wrong. Because if there's no God, death ends everything. There's no meaning to life. It's all like a bad joke. You pass through like you're an infinitesimally small part of the universe, in an infinitesimally small period of time in the universe history, and you're gone, and it's it for eternity. You don't see your loved ones. You will never reconnect. Death is it. Why would you hope that that's the case? That's why you're not intellectually honest. If you're an atheist and you say you hope you're right, you're not intellectually honest. You really hope life is meaningless? You really hope you will never reconnect with loved ones? Okay, it's hard for me to believe. But that's not analogous to I hope I'm right or wrong with regard to the messianic claims with regard to Jesus. If I'm wrong and Jesus is the Messiah, then what happens? I don't believe that if I'm wrong, God will punish me. Christians might believe, well, if you're wrong, you don't have salvation. I respect that. It's not my view. But if, let's say I'm right. Let's say I'm right, Jesus is not the Messiah, then I certainly don't risk not having salvation from my understanding of that, because I believe that salvation comes by deeds, by works. That's the basic understanding I have of who is saved. Now, the Christian answer is, but nobody does enough works to be saved. But that's not the Jewish position, never has been, and I don't think it's the logical position. God doesn't expect us to be perfect. He made an imperfect being. So we're judged on the basis of how much good or bad that we do. And that's my belief. I don't expect Christians to have that belief. And I'm not trying to convince anybody of it. All I'm saying is, if I'm right, then I don't pay a price. If the atheist is right, he pays a terrible price. Death ends everything. He doesn't reconnect with loved ones. It's all over. Life is meaningless. There's a terrible price for atheism, but I don't pay a terrible price if I'm right. I don't pay any price. That's why it's not a fair analogy, not an accurate analogy. Fair is not the word I should use. It's not an accurate analogy. If the atheist is right, the consequences are awful. If I'm right, the consequences are not awful. Is that clear? I just want to know that it's coming through clear. Because I was never asked this question. So it's a spontaneous response. What are the consequences if the atheist is right? What are the consequences if I'm right? They're not analogous answers. You pay a terrible price if the atheists are right. You pay no price if I'm right. Okay. And thank you for the kind comments. Fernanda, 23, Guanajuato, Mexico. Considering you've traveled all over the world, if you had to move out of the USA, which country or countries would you consider moving to and why? I would probably move to Israel. And maybe one way, I have a number of reasons for that, but I'll give you the one that relates to my being a Jew. Many, many years ago in Los Angeles, I was invited by an Israeli-American group to speak to their members. There's a very large Israeli community in Los Angeles. And I said, I'll come, because they weren't paying. And so I said, I'll come for free on one condition. They said, what's the condition? That you interview me in Hebrew. Because at least then I get to practice my Hebrew. So I'll get some immediate personal benefit, aside from, I love to touch people's lives. Anyway, he said, you know Hebrew? I said, yes. He said, okay, great, we'll do it, fine. So one of the first questions the interviewer asked me is, Dennis, are you first a Jew or first an American? And I came up with an answer on the spot, which I so liked, I have used it for 30 years, whenever the issue has arisen. And I said, here's my answer to you. I have two fathers, Abraham and George Washington. And I still feel the same to this day. If I moved from America, it would be because things got so awful here that George Washington had been rejected, which I'm afraid is happening, by the way. I do believe the founders are being rejected. This is a very sad thing for me to say to you. Other reasons that I would say Israel is a very happy country. It's also, I think in the Western world, it produces the most family life of any country in the Western world. The greatest number of children and the greatest number of marriages per capita, I believe. It's extremely family-centered. And I love that. And prior to October 7, 2023, it was regularly ranked as one of the happiest countries in the world, despite the fact that it's surrounded by people who want to annihilate it. But there's a love of life in Israel that I've always found infectious. Okay, let's see here. Joseph, 43. I got to admit, this is a first. My sister is faking cancer. That alone. Hello. Your sister is faking cancer. If you're right, it's beyond belief. If you're wrong, it's beyond belief. Either way, if you're wrong, that's awful that you think your sister is faking cancer. But if you're right, it is awful that your sister is faking cancer. Okay. I've confirmed with 2 cancer pathologists. She's scamming family for tens of thousands of dollars. By the way, what I don't understand is you've checked with 2 cancer pathologists. I assume she has doctors who says she has cancer. It's right. I mean, it's a little inconceivable that, okay, let's say she's faking it, but she can't fake it without some doctor affirming it. So, I don't know, what's her name is, I don't know, Linda. Well, that's not a name any longer. Give me a name for a 43-year-old woman.
Joanne.
Joanne, okay. Joanne is about as dated as Linda, but okay. So, Joanne, you have cancer. That is awful. Can I speak to your doctor? Well, I don't have a doctor who says I have cancer. So, Joanne, what does your doctor say? I don't have a doctor. Wait, you don't have a doctor who says you have cancer? How do you know you have cancer? So, this is a missing part of your question, Joseph. You have doctors who say she doesn't have cancer. I can't believe she doesn't have doctors who say that she does. Because if she doesn't, why would she expect you to take her seriously? I know I have cancer, but there isn't a doctor on the planet that does, right? It's this. So I can't really answer your question because I don't know enough information. You have doctors that say she doesn't. She must have doctors who say she does. So how do you know she's scamming the family? I believe she might well be. But if she has doctors who says she has cancer, this is my final thought on this. If she has doctors who says she has cancer, it's hard to accuse her of just scamming. If she doesn't have such doctors, then of course it's a scam. Right? I'm trying to think of an analogy, but you could say it with anything you want. I have malaria. Really, Dennis? You have malaria? Yep. What does the doctor say? I don't have a doctor who says I have malaria. Doesn't sound right, does it? Sounds suspicious. Okay, fine. All right, next. Rhett, 22, Riverton, Utah. I'm having trouble finding dates. I am an average-looking guy with a full-time job and I'm going to school. I am deeply religious. I have lots of friends and I'm a sociable person. I ask many young women on dates, but all have declined, which I respect. How can I become a man that girls want to date? I might know the answer if I met you. I can't know the answer from this. Okay, you're 22, so presumably you're only asking 22-year-olds out or girls younger than 22. Correct? Correct. So a lot of 22-year-old, 21, 8, 19, 20-year-olds of both sexes are not particularly mature. And a lot of girls that age, they will not be all that desirous of hooking up. I don't mean the sexual way, of just hooking up, of bonding with a 22-year-old who is not famous or rich or gorgeous or a major athlete. There's a lot of superficial desires. There are a lot of superficial desires in a young woman. Young men are their own issues. So it is also possible that you're doing something or you're communicating some aspect of you that isn't enticing them. So that's why I say I would love to meet you, and then I would be able to ascertain better. By the way, as regards, what is that line you used? Average-looking guy. By definition, most guys are average-looking. If average-looking guys couldn't get women, there would be very few marriages. Guys don't become attractive. Guys become attractive to a 20-year-old or 19, 18-year-old girl. Looks are a big deal. He's cute. That ends by the late 20s in 99% of women, where he's cute isn't particularly significant, but rather he's ambitious, he's strong, he's masculine, he's funny, he's wealthy. I mean, they're all more important than, is he cute? But when you're 19, is he cute is a big deal for most women. Not for all, but for most young women. So your average looking issue isn't enough. But you're so young and you're dating presumably your age or younger, something has to stand out. What you should do is try to meet other religious girls. That's your best chance. Because then what did you say? I mean, because you sound pretty impressive. I mean, full-time job at 22 and going to school and deeply religious and have lots of friends. Sound like a winner to me. Right? But take Jeff. He has none of that. I couldn't help it. It arose.
Hurtful.
Just for the record, men insult men they really like. That is how you know it's they're men, because women don't do that. There aren't two women on earth who do that. What's our story, by the way? Where we're at? It's a good way to end. Take Jeff.
I'll give him advice.
Okay. All right. Great to be with you. See you next week. The Fireside Chat is made possible solely thanks to Prager United members. Please consider joining Prager United at PragerUnited.